Hello and welcome to the Hellraiser Boxing YouTube channel. This is my blog on the James Degale Caleb Truax 2, like the rematch fight, which we've just watched. I actually thought James deserved the decision. I did think he did. I thought he was very lucky. My most pertinent point would be he was so clumsy with the head. It could have easily have given a point away. I mean, really, I actually thought he should have been taken another point because Truax was clumsy with his head, but James's looked like blatant. You know, looked like they were premeditated at times, and they definitely did connect more cleanly with the head. And he easily could have been deducted another point, and that would have cost him the fight there. I actually thought he boxed much better. I mean, the tactics he had, for one, completely different to the last time. He was moving, he was holding the centre of the ring that little bit, like long enough to cause Truax to engage with him in the centre of the ring, but then he was moving and he was off and he was using angles, and he I thought he was outboxing Truax for most of the for long periods of the fight. Certainly the second half of the fight, I thought he sort of stepped it up and took over. I mean, the performance as a whole compared to what I think James Degale can deliver, I thought was not good. You know, I mean, moving forward, I don't know where James goes from here. Does he go straight into a big fight? I mean, off the back of that, I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 fighters that I could name off the top of my head that I think would have beaten James soundly if he boxed how he boxed last night. So I think there's definitely some negatives to be taken from it. The main thing, obviously, he's got his world title back, and sometimes I think, you know, you can have a scrappy fight and get the win, and it's the right thing to do. I mean, I was quite critical of Anthony Joshua the other week because he sort of won ugly, and I didn't think he needed to win ugly. It was a live opponent and a strong, risky opponent to some degree, but I didn't think that Joseph Parker warranted the tactics that Joshua put in. I think Degale here, if he lost, that was him dead and buried. That was him finished, end of him, because the sort of money he's been earning, you know, he's an Olympic Games gold medalist, no one's going to want to pay that coming off 2 losses. That would be him completely done and dusted. I saw an interview leading up to this fight where the interviewer is talking to James. James says, "Oh, well, you know, the last fight, my right shoulder wasn't working," and there's probably truth in that, because you look at the fight, he does not hardly really use, he doesn't double up on the jab. He doesn't really throw hardly any punches. Looks like he's not even fit. I mean, just sort of stands on the ropes and gets worked over. And the interviewer says to him, "Well, if your shoulder wasn't fixed, why did you take the fight?" And James Degale said, "To pay off my mortgage," which is a very honest answer, and I think, you know, a small part of me commends the fact that he was honest about it. But this is the reason why boxers need managers that are attached to them, not advisors who are attached to the promoters, because it sometimes might suit the promoter for a boxer just to take the fight whether he's injured or not. A manager would not allow that. I mean, certainly none of the boxers that I've got. I mean, I wouldn't go along with that. Okay, take the fight even though you're not healed, because that's a sure way to shorten your career and devalue yourself. Just think, he said to pay off my mortgage, so James got to pay off a chunk of his mortgage after the first Truax fight, presumably. I don't know his finances, but that's what he was saying. If he'd have beaten Truax, there's all I mean, last night could have been a multi-million-pound blockbuster for him. Instead of going off to a relatively small casino in Vegas, away from home, and boxing Caleb Truax again, which even the first fight with Caleb Truax is like he's seen in America certainly as a high level, like a gatekeeper, a high level journeyman and a good level gatekeeper. He's not seen as a world-class fighter. He's seen as he's respected. And that's what I mean. He's like a guy that you fight him. If you beat him, you go on to bigger things. If you don't beat him, you're not quite ready for the world level fights yet. But that's not really world champion. World champion should be the best in the world, surely, even in these times where we've got like four 4 world champions, in some cases 5, where you've got super champions and stuff like that. But anyway, right, James got the job done. Now he can move on to bigger and better things. If he'd have had the big blockbuster last night, he'd have made a chunk more money than what he's made out of this. So by getting himself a little bit more money earlier, he's cost himself a huge amount. And welcome to boxing, welcome to my world. That's exactly what happens in boxing. And it's so frustrating, you know, when you see guys who, like, even as a manager, I say, well, I think we should get this sparring partner. We're going to go to this place to prepare in this way. And that means that the purse money goes down. Because if the purse is 20,000 and I suggest, right, let's spend 3,000 on sparring partners or on travelling to a certain place where we can get lots of this type of style of boxer, because it does seem to work like that. Like in Vegas, you get a certain style. In Philadelphia, you get a different style. In London, you get a different style. And sometimes I say to people, look, we can do this in London. That's the way to do it. The best sparring for this fight is to spar with this guy, and this guy, and that's in London, and it's cheap, and we can do it. But sometimes it's not, and it involves investment. The difference being that I've evolved and I've come along myself as a businessman. I've never wanted to be a businessman, and I loved boxing. I just wanted to work with boxing. But the thing is, you've got to be a businessman, and the boxers, making bad business decisions can cost them a huge amount of money, even if initially, like I say, James Degale, yes, he did pay off a chunk of his money the first time he boxed Truax. Looking at the performance that he had last night, which wasn't an outstanding performance, but it was much better than the first time. I mean, the tactics that he had last night, I would have thought, I mean, anybody that knows anything about technical boxing would have advised that. I mean, hold that centre of the ring, at least initially. You're not going to stand in the centre of the ring and slug with Caleb Truax, because he's probably going to come unstuck. But you've got to hold that centre of the ring for as long as you can, and then use the lateral movement to extend the period that you can stay in the centre of the ring. And he, last night he did that, and it was a difference between him getting caught on the ropes and beaten up like he did the last time, and coming away with a world title and a win. And it's just a real shame that he didn't have that, you know, that insight to himself before the fight. I mean, hindsight's a lovely thing, wonderful thing, but I didn't think it was an outstanding performance. But he for me, the few people were saying Truax won. I can't really blame them. There was a lot of rounds that were hard to score. There were, and you know, I thought that, as I said in my blog before, I thought Truax was remarkable value. I mean, you could get sort of early on, you could get 5-1, then 9-2. Even the 7-2 was good value on him, because for me that was 50-50. And I think even coming off the fight they had last night, if you'd have had like 10 judges, it wouldn't surprise me if you had 4 of them going for Truax. I mean, it was that sort of fight, and it possibly could have gone the other way, especially with the headbutts. I thought James was way too clumsy with the head, and James knows exactly what he's doing. He's a southpaw. Southpaws generally move to their right. The orthodox guys are also moving to their left, which is the same, so you're moving into the same area. And head clashes are very common in those instances. And James will have known that, and so would Caleb Truax. But last night I thought James was very clumsy with his head, and he easily could have dropped at least 1 point more. He got docked 1 point, he could have lost another one. But anyway, people, another blog coming for you soon. Thank you for watching, and not a classic last night, but at least James redeemed himself in my eyes. It'd be very interesting to see what they propose next, because coming from last night, I think it gave us a lot of information about James in terms of where he's at in his career, what point and what his capabilities are, and depending on the opponent that comes next, then that'll influence what we do in the blog, the Hellraiser blog. Okay, give us a like and give us a subscribe, and see you again very soon, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.